stunning news from the accountants who for years kept the books for Donald Trump's business empire. Now they're saying, count us out. They're cutting ties with Trump. Not only that, the accounting firm Mazars is also warning the Trump organization and telling it to warn others not to rely on nearly a decade's worth of those financial statements. This comes, as you know, in the middle of an ongoing civil and criminal probe into whether the former president illegally inflated the value of his assets to obtain loans, or has his former attorney Michael Cohen once said, merely to boost his status.
It was my experience that Mr. Trump inflated his total assets when it served his purposes, such as trying to be listed amongst the wealthiest people in Forbes, and deflated his assets to reduce his real estate taxes.
So 3 years later, here we are. CNN's Kara Scannell joins us now with the very latest. So, Kara, what did Mazars say in this letter to the Trump organization?
Well, John, they said that telling the Trump organization that they should no longer rely on nearly 10 years of financial statements. These were the financial statements that Mazars had compiled for the Trump organization. And they said that this is based on a couple of things. One is the New York Attorney General's investigation. They made a very public filing last month that went into great detail about various misstatements, allegations of misstatements and omissions in these financial statements, everything from the size of Donald Trump's triplex apartment at Trump Tower to how much cash they had on hand to how they were valuing golf courses. So a significant move. And but in this, though, interestingly, they are not drawing any sharp conclusions about whether there was any fraud here. They say, while we have not concluded that the various financial statements as a whole contain material discrepancies based upon the totality of the circumstances, we believe our advice to you to no longer rely upon those financial statements is appropriate. And they're telling them that they should tell lenders, insurers, anyone else who's relied on this about this. And as you mentioned, they also quit. They said that they would no longer do any work because of an unwaverable conflict of interest.
They say we're out. So how does this affect the Attorney General's investigation?
Well, it's never good when your accountant says that you can't rely on the financial statements. And it certainly re-emphasizes this point that we have known, that the accounting firm is cooperating with the investigation, both the New York Attorney General and the Manhattan District Attorney, which has that criminal investigation. Donald Bender, the lead partner who has been the liaison with Donald Trump and the Trump organization for years, he has been cooperating. He went before the grand jury, we reported last year. So it's not a good sign. This also indicates just, again, that there is this break. Mazars had said in the financial statements that Trump came up with the numbers and that they had compiled it and that it didn't comply with GAAP. But here they're also saying, now we're unsure about this at all.
What is the Trump organization saying about all this?
Well, they're trying to play it to their advantage. I mean, they say that they're disappointed that Mazars is no longer going to represent them, but they're trying to imply that this is an indication, because Mazars did not outright find some fraud, that this is then a seal of approval, and they're saying that the investigations are moot. They've also have alleged that Tish James, the New York Attorney General, and the DA are politically motivated.
All right, Kara Scannell, thank you so much for that reporting. Really appreciate it. Joining us now, CNN chief political analyst Gloria Borger, also Bloomberg senior columnist and Trump biographer Timothy O'Brien. He's the author of Trump Nation, The Art of Being the Donald. And here with me, CNN chief legal analyst Jeffrey Toobin. Jeffrey, I want to start with you. This letter from Mazars, is it wrong to read into it? This is tantamount to them saying Trump lied to us?
I think that's the only logical implication that you can draw from this. I mean, remember how accountants deal with clients. The way it works is the accountant says, give me your financial data, and we will turn it into a tax return, a financial statement. But they rely on the candor and honesty of their clients. And what this letter says is that we can't rely on the candor and honesty of this client, the Trump organization. Now, who prepared the false information? Who knew information that had been provided to the accountants was false? That's not disclosed here. Was it Donald Trump himself? Was it lower level people in the organization? Not at all clear. But what is clear is that the numbers were wrong.
Common to do, to cut ties?
Super uncommon, very uncommon. And by the way, the Trump organization's comment that this somehow vindicates them is nuts. I mean, it's quite the opposite.
So, Gloria, you know the pushback is going to be this is an investigation being run by liberal Democrats out to get Trump.
Sure.
Can you lop an accounting firm that you've worked with for decades into this a bunch of liberals out to get me pot?
No, look, the accounting firm just fired their client, and they said that it was based on information from what they called internal and external sources, meaning we have done an investigation, and for the last decade, we've been telling you stuff that we now believe is no longer true. So try, as the Trump organization might, to blame this on Letitia James or politics or whatever else. Mazars has been their client for 10 years, represented them for 10 years. So suddenly, what are they going to do? Turn on the accounting firm? I mean, I think it's very difficult for them to do that. And if you're investors at some point looking to invest somewhere down the road with the Trump organization, and this has occurred, why would you ever do that?
So, Tim, you've written about the former president's finances for a long time. At one point, he unsuccessfully sued you for what he claimed was a lowball description of his net worth. Did you ever think you'd see a day when Mazars just dumped him?
Actually, no, only because Mazars has been representing Donald Trump for longer than 10 years. And I find it rather mysterious why they're saying they suddenly decided something was amiss here. We deposed the predecessor firm, Trump's accountants, that Mazars acquired. Mazars has represented Trump for much longer than 10 years. It's over 2 decades at this point, I think. And Trump said during my deposition that he had given me these statements of financial condition, and I ignored him. Now, he never gave those to me, but they produced them during litigation. And the documents we received during the litigation in the mid-2000s, Mazars said in those documents that we're not going to sign off on these as conforming with GAAP, generally accepted accounting practices, because there's not enough here that makes us comfortable. They knew it was problematic long before a decade ago. The difference then was it wasn't the New York Attorney General and the Manhattan District Attorney raising these questions. Mazars said in the letter today that they filed that one of the things that convinced them to leave Trump in the dust was because of New York Attorney General Letitia James's January filing, in which she laid out a number of examples in which Trump had inflated his assets. Well, that's not new. Trump was doing that 20 years ago, and Mazars, I think, had reason to suspect then. But now they're exposed to the same investigation that's targeting Trump. So I think they're concerned about whether or not they've got criminal or civil exposure as a result of these investigations. I think the other practical implication of this is that Donald Trump is also in the midst of trying to refinance hundreds of millions of dollars in debt because his business holdings are under pressure, and his accountant just walked out the door. So the financial pressure has accelerated on his company, on him, and on his children. And Trump is going to have to start to scramble to find people who want to lend him money now and are comfortable doing business with someone whose own accountants don't want to work with him.
Jeffrey, pertinent to both the civil investigation, which is from the New York Attorney General Letitia James, and the criminal investigation, which is from the Manhattan DA?
Yes, it's relevant to both because the core allegation that both are investigating is that Trump inflated his assets, that is, submitted financial statements that were unduly and inaccurately large when he was trying to borrow money, and submitted financial statements that were unduly small, lying too small when he was being taxed. Mm-hmm. That's at the heart of both investigations. All of those submissions to the banks, to the tax authorities, were prepared by these accountants who have now said, don't rely on these documents.
So, Gloria, I guess the $1 million question, or maybe it's the $300,000 question, depending on who's doing the valuation. The question is, what will this do to Trump politically as he positions for the 2024 race?
Well, look, Trump supporters are Trump supporters. I think the question is for Donald Trump right now. The question is, how serious is this for him personally, financially? And given what's going on with the January 6th committee, he has a whole other circus going on there about accountability on January 6th. And so I think the question is going to be what happens in the state of New York, first of all, and then you'll have to see what happens. His supporters will be there, but we have to really give this a little more time to play out.
Tim, we got about 30 seconds left. I want to give you the last question here. Trump was deposed as part of your case right there. Just to remind our viewers, how many times do you think he lied during his deposition under oath?
We caught him out. We caught him out lying about 30 times in that deposition on everything from his financial dealings to how much he got for speaking fees. He is pathologic on these sort of things.
10 seconds, Jeffrey.
I think the point Tim is making about his financial condition, he needs to borrow money from someone. Who is going to lend money to someone who doesn't even have an accountant? And who will be his accountant will be now?
And I think that's bad for the kids. It's really bad for Ivanka and her brothers, who presumably would want to carry on the Trump organization beyond him.
Gloria Borger, Tim O'Brien, Jeffrey Toobin, thank you all very much.